Hey everyone, welcome back to the Bear Your Shield podcast. I'm your host, Ron Scheffler, and I am super jacked on this episode as it's our first industry experience interview at the studio today. And I've got a couple of nerds with us, and I'm just super excited here to talk to these guys. The turf nerds are in town. And guys, just talk to me a little bit. Introduce yourselves. Evan, Uncle Greg, talk to me a little bit about you guys are married, children, years of experience in the turf industry. Just give us a little bit of background, if you would.
Super. Ron, thank you. It's an honor to be on the Bear Your Shield podcast. Greg and I are avid listeners. It's good content because it's correct and true and godly content. And my name is Evan Lindman. I've been in the lawn and landscaping industry for almost about 16 years now. Graduated high school in 2010 and wound up getting into lawn care. And it turned into a career. The Lord has blessed us. I got married in 2020. Married in August of 2020. Had to think about that for a minute. Oh, man, not even been married that long.
That's all right.
I have a 3-year-old son. I have a daughter that was just born on March 4th, and it's been a great ride. The podcast was kind of a thing that was, well, we launched a podcast, Turf Nerds. Everyone knows the Uncle Greg Durbin, but I'll let him speak for that. It was something that was kind of born a couple of years ago, back in 2022. My sister-in-law actually said, hey, how about, because I was kicking around a podcast idea, she said, hey, how about Turf Nerds? And it just stuck. I didn't have any creativity with the podcast name. Greg, what do you think about that?
I came in after the fact, so I'm just following your lead. So at that point I was a follower, not a leader. But my name's Greg Durbin. Evan asked me to actually join the Turf Nerds, probably about 20 episodes in or so, Evan? Is that about right?
It was episode number, oh man, I have to go back and look, but Greg's been on it for almost 2 years now. We've done it well over 100 episodes together, and it's been great, because Greg's actually my uncle. People don't understand, like, they call him Uncle Greg, but, like, little do they realize.
Hello, this is Greg.
He's actually my uncle. He knew me, he knew me before I was born, so, and you got into the lawn care biz, but you can tell that, Greg.
Yeah, but I was in the corporate world. Grew up and went off to Central Michigan University and studied there, and worked at a golf course when I was in college, and then so I learned how to cut while I was working on the golf course.
Oh, and I bet you did.
Yeah, and I worked on. Got out of college, worked in corporate life for 30-ish years, 35 years, and just found that after some time, had a couple of experiences that I wasn't particularly pleased with regard to management and such. So found myself out of work, and while I was looking for a job, Evan was cutting and needed some help. While I was looking, I said, okay, I'll just make a few bucks. And after I was probably helping you for about a month, Evan, I believe.
Yes.
And about month and a half-ish, and then I'm just sitting there thinking, you know what? I just don't honestly really feel like going back into the corporate world at this point. I know how to cut. I had my own business about 10 years prior, so I knew how to run a business, and decided, you know what? I could do this. So 2019 made the decision. It was in November 2019, and then 2020 I just started my the own lawn business. So I'm approaching my 7th year in business here now. So looking forward to it. It's been fun. Evan and I bounce stuff off each other all the time. So it's been really a blessing, and working with my nephew, and just keeping things in the family.
Yeah, well, what a good nephew, right? And the turf industry has never been the same since. So that's awesome. And Greg, you're married. Any children?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, I have married my wife, Shell. We married in 93, so we're going to have our 33rd anniversary this year. And then, so I'm going to be moving, let me see, I'm sorry, I was moving my microphone, so I had to say
Sounds
moving
good,
my
Greg.
microphone. So, but we've been married. We'll be 33 years this year, and then we have 3 children, and 28, 24, and 23. And been real excited. 2 of them are still in the area here. One of them lives out in Colorado.
Yeah, well, congrats on that longevity in the marriage. We're just 1 year ahead of you only, so we got married in '92. So
Okay.
I love the fact that the Turf Nerds name kind of came from nowhere, and there wasn't a lot of thought to it, like you said, Evan. But I gotta know the question: is there a difference between a nerd and a geek, in your opinion?
Oh man! So Greg and I were actually chatting about this morning. Greg, we actually looked it up. I think it was the pre-show before our show on Turf Sub Radio. A nerd and a geek, and without looking it up, like when I think of someone who's like a nerd, I mean, honestly, I thought they were kind of synonymous. This is a really good question because I didn't want to prep for just this question. So, a nerd and a geek. Oh, he's a nerd. I always thought like a nerd is someone who has great a great extensive, profound knowledge in the type of a field, and then a geek's just kind of like I think geek's like the word for like a dweeb, who's someone who also knows stuff, but it just I think nerd sounds nicer than geek. I don't know, Greg. What do you think about that?
Well, I think the actual definition nerd is someone who's intellectual, studious, and then the a geek is probably someone who's really excited about. He's really geeked up about computers, or geeked up about baseball. So he's really into something, pop culture, games, whatever. So I think that's the difference between those. So turf geeks didn't probably sound that great. So I think turf nerds probably blended a little bit better.
Yeah, I don't think turf geeks sounds well. I don't think blank geeks sounds well. Fit anything in there, and I don't think it sounds well. And I appreciate that, Evan. I haven't heard the word dweeb since middle school. It's a long time ago.
Dweeby,
so,
yeah, it's kind of dating me, right?
Now you're making me wonder what's the what are they actually called? Dweeb. Dweeb.
I don't know. I always thought dweeb was kind of like a dork or like a
dweeb
geek.
Meaning here.
Geeky,
let's
yeah,
see.
like geek guys. When I think geek around, I think someone that's got like the pen in his front pocket to his button up and
old school
braces.
Engineering. Yeah. Pocket protector. Tape
all you
on
engineers
the
out there. Hey guys, Ron's an engineer, so there you go. Maybe Ron Scheffler over at Bobcat's a dweeb.
I kind of retired my pocket protector. Yeah.
You're socially awkward, boring, unfashionable, or timid. That would be the definition of a dweeb. So now I used to, when I worked at, Evan doesn't even remember this, Ron would remember them, Kmart, when I was in college. So I used to have the pocket protector. So would have about 6 or 8 pens going across in my pocket there. So it was kind of fun.
Yeah, I might fall into that definition of dweeb if it wasn't for my wife of unfashionable. I think I wore the same. I'd still be wearing the same thing I wore in high school if it wasn't for my wife to straighten me out a little bit. Crying out loud. And speaking of my wife, Evan, my wife was listening to the Charlie Kirk show a few months back. It's been a little bit longer now. And
a while ago.
I was traveling. She called me up. She says, "Hey, do you know a landscaper named Evan?" I said, "I sure do. He's a nerd." And she's like, "Yeah." She said, "I heard him on the Charlie Kirk podcast show." And I was like, "Oh, dang it!" So I went back and listened to that one because I had missed it. So yeah. So anyways, you're out there and appreciate the faith and everything and following TPUSA like that. Which brings kind of like this segue here. We got to know each other a few years ago at Equip Expo. We're in the same turf industry and have similar passions. And the more that I talk with you guys, the more I find out that we have a lot in common. I think as human beings, as men, in our work lives and everything. And I really think that's really cool. And I wholeheartedly believe that the Lord has brought us together. However that looks like in the future, just might be just for now. But I totally agree that people cross our paths for certain reasons. And I just find your guys' story encouraging. The prayer breakfast that we talk about, that we've talked about on your show in the past, that's coming up in 2026 in Louisville. It's just exciting stuff that happens regarding our faith, and I really appreciate the fact that together you guys have a lot of years of marital experience here, a bunch of children, and I know that you guys are trying to do things the right way. It's one thing when we talk about our faith inside our four walls of our home and everything like that, and I guess there's some comfortability in that. And I do want to bring back up the show when we talk, but how we met at the show. But when you guys are out and you're visiting clients, it's a tough industry. We're in a tough industry, whether it's landscapers, customers, however you look at it. It's a tough world out there. How do you guys bring your faith into your workplace? How do the turf nerds bring their faith to their customers, to their clients?
Well, Greg and I, it's pretty simple. Greg and I have the gift of gab. We have no problem talking, which has probably gotten us in trouble here and there, because sometimes we can just burn and waste time. But bringing into the faith into our work has been I've never really been ashamed just to talk. I mean, as simple as just listening to people, and Greg will be able to tell you too, just listening to clients, treating their lawns like we would treat them, like our own lawns. And when you just talk to people, it just opens up the opportunity to simply say, hey, I'm praying for you. It's kind of cliche, but then more than that, actually pray for them. And Greg can kind of touch on this though too, and I've gotten more boldness because Greg was encouraging me to actually pray for your clients, not just say that you're praying with them. Stop what you're doing right there. I've shut the mower off with a client before because her husband had died that morning, like literally that morning. He was in his 90s. She came outside. She told me, I tried to quote some verses to her from my poor memory, and we just prayed for her there on the spot. And Greg has some clients, Greg, and he'd be able to tell it that, I mean, they're older too, but Greg and I will spend anywhere from 10 to 15 minutes talking to people, and this gives us the opportunity. It's easing into it, and then we just, I guess maybe it's the boldness through the Holy Spirit and knowing His Word just to share our faith and to give people the true hope that's out there, and it's we try to give them eternal hope.
Yeah, and I think Evan's right. We're both bold enough to be able to have a discussion with our clients. But what I think happens to us is because of the diligence in what we do, because of the detail that we put into our accounts, people look at us differently. And I've said this before. The song, I think it was Steve Green had the song "You're the Only Jesus Some May Ever See." So that example of making sure that we're trimming right, that we're edging properly, we're blowing off stuff, being conscientious, I think opens a door for us to be able to have discussions with our clients. And I've probably, half a dozen or so clients that I've had an opportunity to be able to pray with. One of my clients told me she was going in for colonoscopy. She was real nervous about that. So we, because she was having some issues and they wanted to check out something, and so she was a little bit nervous about that. We're standing right there in the middle of her driveway. I just put my arm around her, said, "Let me pray for you." And I've had other clients. One who I knew was a believer. I found out one day we were talking. He came outside. We were talking, and somehow it came up that he was diagnosed with some skin cancer of some sort. I can't remember what it was, but we were talking, and I just say, "Let's pray." And I put my hand on his shoulder, and I, he really appreciated it. And so it's just the opportunity, I think, that we build by being conscientious about what we're doing, being kind with our clients, because like you said, Ron, this is kind of a tough industry. We see a lot of guys out there that are they're out there smoking a cigarette while they're trimming, and not that that's necessarily rough, but usually that kind of accompanies some other type of character, potentially. And but this is kind of a rough industry that we see, and so by us being the way we are, by being conscientious, by being formally interacting with our clients, it gives us the opportunity to share a little bit more than most people probably would.
Yeah, I think that conscientious word is just, you hit the nail right on the head. What makes you different from the other folks that are out there. And being conscientious, you're doing it right. We are told to work as we are doing unto the Lord. And I just feel like, people watch what we do day in, day out. I'm not out in the grass as much as you guys are. We're in the same industry, but I'm more in the corporate world here now, and it's just a similar thing. Whether I'm standing in the grass or sharing an office or a computer with somebody, it's the conscientiousness that we have to remember who's watching us. And who's watching us is practically everybody.
Oh yeah.
Well, I remember years ago. I'm sorry to interrupt. I remember when I was in college, I was probably a year into my faith, and I remember one of the friends that was in one of the groups I was in with Fellowship of Christian Athletes, and these other friends were with Campus Crusade. We lived a couple doors down from each other, and we got along really well. And anyway, one of the girls was dating a guy, and she came up to me and she said, "I just want you to know, Greg, you don't realize," I forget the guy's name, I'll say Dave. She said, "Dave is really watching you." And because he wasn't a believer yet. And she said, he sees you walking across campus, always got a smile on your face, talking to everybody, just enjoying yourself. And she said, he's watching. He's been seeing how you are, and you've been a great inspiration to him. So, and that's kind of the way I've been since then. Didn't realize that was actually happening, but after I found that out, I've tried to live up to that. Live up to that smile. How's that?
Yeah. A smile goes a long way. My two sons, so I've 4 kids, 4 adult kids, 2 sons, 2 daughters, and both my sons are in the military, and both have a similar story where they don't swear. And when they were in training, they both had people come up to them and said, "What's your deal? I've never heard a cuss word come out of your mouth, so what's the scoop?" Right? And that was a chance to just say, "Hey, we're going to be called to talk about and defend the words that come out of our mouth, right? Everything that comes out, we're going to have to answer for." And they use it as a way of testimony, and not to say shame on you, guy, for swearing or anything, but just, this is what I believe and this is why. And it's both have a story too, a follow-up of just how it made people think, which is kind of cool in and of itself. And so there again, that conscientiousness of it, I love it. I feel a theme coming up, Greg.
Now you make me wonder. I gotta think about that. So, but no, it's important, and it goes a long way. I had a guy that was helping me out a little bit, and one day he was talking to me, and he's a pretty rough guy. I mean, he's had a rough life. He's cleaned himself up, but I mean, he can't say. I don't think he can say a sentence without throwing in the F word, and he's just throwing stuff out constantly. And I don't think, honestly, there was a sentence that didn't come out with it. And one day he looks at me and says, "You don't swear, do you?" And I don't see I don't see the need. I don't see the necessity. And but he was watching. I didn't realize it, but he was really paying attention. And so again, you don't know who's watching, but you're the only Jesus some may ever see. So that's what I try and do. Yeah,
planting seeds, right, guys? Mm-hmm. And how cool that we can say planting seeds in our industry. Just dawned on me.
Kentucky Blue. Oh yeah, right.
Well, both you guys chatted about a time that you were successful, right? Praying with the client. First of all, that's super inspiring. Just stopping, Evan, I think you said, just turn the engine off right then and there. Just inspiring to hear those types of stories. Is there a time or a client that you talked to that maybe you just weren't so successful, that just kind of went south on you, that you could share, where maybe people didn't want to share their faith, and kind of how did you react?
I had a client, a tragic story happened to both of them. I'll leave the details out, but they were Jehovah's Witnesses, and I tried for many years to kind of witness to them, and I had burned several hours in time of trying to witness to her rather than him. He was just kind of a weirdo. He was very weird. And I tried with them for a while. Some tragic things happened to them.
Would that make him a dweeb, a nerd, or a geek?
He's just being weird. He was very weird. And she was more so seeking the truth than he was. And I actually read a book. It was basically a book that kind of debunked a lot of their this views, the Jehovah's Witnesses, because there was someone who was in basically part of the governing body, and they got out of it there in the 80s, and I read this book, and this guy had I felt like I was never very successful with them, and sometimes I would scare them away, but any sort of client who I've at least said, hey, I'm praying for it, no one's ever really really rejected, although this Jehovah's Witness client, their friend, I had got to know the friend of this client, and I tried to pray with him on the phone once, and he said no. So he's the guy who prints out our shirts and stuff, like Turf Nerds shirts and things like that. And I tried to pray with him on the phone once over some tragic stuff that happened last year, and he said no thanks. So I felt like, oh man, I'm trying to share the actual truth and love of Christ to you when you basically told me to drop dead, which that kind of just rattled me there for a bit. But I mean, when they're so steeped in something that's so false, you can't blame them.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had a client that he was going to have some surgery next day or day after, I don't recall. And it was interesting because I had just had a conversation with Evan's dad about having the opportunity to share with people. And while I was out working, and he says, oh, yeah, that's great that you have. He says, most people won't turn that down if you get an opportunity to pray with them. And, especially if they're in the hospital or if things are going on, they're rarely going to turn it down. So I called Joel back a couple days later. This was, I think, on a Sunday. We probably had Thanksgiving or something, some kind of dinner together. And 2 days later, I happened to be talking with this client and called Evan's dad back and said, so I had this conversation with this guy, and I said, remember how you said, people just won't turn you down if they're going in for surgery or something? And he says, oh, yeah, I remember that. And I said, yep, got my first turn down. and the guy, he's in his 80s. And it was funny. I said, hey, I know you're going in for surgery. Can I pray for you? He says, nope. And I said,
really?
You don't want me to pray for you? And he says, well, really? My mom went in for surgery one time, and she didn't come back out. So
oh, boy.
I didn't know. So I called Joel, and I said, well, and he says, well, he had a reason. So, but
yeah, that's a shame.
It really was a shame, but it kind of makes me laugh a little bit because it was just 2 days prior when we had the conversation. And but most people are pretty interested in having you pray for them if you get that opportunity. I think that's the only time I've been turned down for prayer like that. So, but I'm still working on him, still trying to talk to him a little bit, but we'll see. Hopefully I'll have an opportunity to share with him before he passes. So before he gets too old.
Yeah, maybe a little overseeding's needed there, right? Instead of just planting seeds. So
yes.
Needs aeration too.
Yeah, I think that's about right. We met back in 2024 at Equip Expo. I think that was the first year that I went to the prayer breakfast in Louisville there, and it got me so jacked up the whole week of Louisville. Usually I come home on Friday evening and I'm wiped, I'm spent, and but that year I went to the prayer breakfast, and my son came along, and I don't know, it was just energized. It's like the Holy Spirit just gave us the energy for the entire week. And I came back Friday night, I get home late at night, and I'm like, blah, 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 and Tracy's probably trying to sleep, and I'm just like, God, this happened. And you guys were one of my big stories, right? You came in and you we chatted on the Turf Nerds podcast, and you guys interviewed me, and we got to know each other later. And I think you guys came back twice more to the booth just to chat. We talked about faith a couple of times, and then you guys introduced me to your wives, which I thought was really special of you guys to do that. And I was just grateful for it, to kind of get to know your families a bit. And that was really cool to me, because I just felt like, man, there are so many more people out there that are brothers or sisters in Christ that we don't know, and we won't know on this side of heaven. But I feel like at times like that, when we meet people that are in our industry that are believers, it's almost kind of like the movie 300, right? Where the Spartans guys, they lock their shields together, and together we can help conquer things and move faith forward in our industry like that. Do you guys feel that way at all? Or, I mean, you guys are pretty well connected.
Greg, what do you think?
Well, we kept coming back. We were trying to plant seeds, Ron.
Yeah.
What type of grass seed, Greg?
Yeah. Well, what was interesting is I remember I just enjoyed our conversation that we had with you. And at that time we didn't know you were a believer.
Greg can talk, Ron, is what he's saying.
Yeah, but we just really enjoyed. I just really enjoyed meeting you and talking with you. And somewhere along the line, I think we figured out that we were both believers. We both missed that prayer breakfast that day. Was that Daryl Strawberry that spoke at that? Is that who it was?
Yeah, it was Strawberry. Okay. Yeah,
I felt so bad because we missed it, and then I hear from Greg. We kept popping back to the Bobcat booth. Greg's like, he's a believer. I said, oh, really? And I sat there and I kind of felt ashamed. Like, did we not? When we met down and sat down with Ron and did the show at the 2024 show, Greg, were we not like Christ-like enough to Ron? Now I felt kind of bad.
Well, I feel like I must have been smoking and cussing or something for Greg not to know. You
were great, Ron.
No, you were great. But it was just, I really enjoyed the conversation. Really enjoyed meeting you, and it was just. It was nice time to be able to talk with you. I think it was probably. I also remember you said to me, because we were by there the next day, and you said, I just got to say that you guys. I think you said you were at the prayer breakfast, and then you said, that was the best day you've had in how many years of going to the expo. That you thought that was probably one of the best days you've ever had there, and you said something about the prayer breakfast, and then having a chance to do the show with us, and that was an honor for you to hear you say that. And you said you guys were part of that, just having a really great day, and you had spoken to your wife about that. So, but the industry, because we know Evan's met a few guys, and I've gotten to know them since. But there's a lot of guys out there that we interact with that are believers, and we encourage each other. We're in a group chat with a bunch of guys that we encourage each other. One of the guys had shoulder surgery, and he was down, so a lot of guys were getting in touch with him, making sure he was okay. He was concerned about whether or not he was going to be able to get started back up, because I think November he had the surgery, Evan, and
yes,
yeah, and he was concerned that he wasn't going to be able to get back to work for six months or so, and he just did his first job, I think, last week, didn't he, Evan?
Yeah, holy smokes, it's crazy, isn't it?
Yeah, so he's been able to get back, but it's the guys. We have a bunch of guys that are encouraging each other, and so we really enjoy that. It's been kind of fun and very enjoyable to especially know guys in the industry and see what we can do to build each other up.
Yeah, you had said that beautifully, Greg. I think there's a lot of more guys who believe in Christ in the industry than we think. I mean, you'd hope the expo, like, they're not tone deaf. I can't still figure out why, and I don't mind saying this, I can't figure out why they don't put the prayer breakfast on the actual Equip Expo program. I mean, I've gone rounds with them. There's the industry. It's at least about 70%. If they're Christian, then if they're not Christian, then they're Catholic. So there's guys out there and they believe, and it's so encouraging just talking to people. And we get into podcasting. So how the podcast worked for the first 16 episodes. I did it with my buddy Ben, and Ben's awesome, and he was just really just someone to kind of co-host, and we got to know Tony Rudolph. Shout out to Tony at Tony's Lawn Care, and through Tony, we got to know Cameron Duncan at the Lawn Care Life,
Moziri,
and then other guys, Aaron. And so we have this group of 7 or 8 guys, Ron, and they're believers, and we encourage each other on the daily. I mean, Andy Wilson just had shoulder surgery, and he's back out there in the field, and Greg and I were able to encourage him though too. It's good to know there's like-minded people out there who just who can take our encouragement, and then we can take theirs.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I'm glad that you guys talked about that, because I know you guys bear your shield. The Bear Your Shield name, it is a long story for that can't really get into today on. But just bearing a shield, protecting those in our community, and our industry is a community. It's a big family, and it's crazy. That you go to the Equip Expo and maybe you haven't seen a particular person since the last expo, and it's just great to catch up, and it's just like no time has passed, so it's really fun event to go there. The prayer breakfast is awesome. Last year was really great too with Mike Singletary. And the one thing that I just am realizing too is, I was expecting last year to be as significant, as exciting as the previous Equip Expo that we just talked about. And last year on Friday, so like my wife came out on Friday night, and we spent a couple of days in Louisville and did some hanging out and things. And she was like, man, what's the matter? And I'm like, nothing. I said, I'd just like to get, let's just grab some dinner, and can we just hang out in the hotel and just chill out and just kind of, I need to regroup and re-energize. She's like, sure. So we're talking, and we're sitting in our hotel room, got the TV on, and we're chatting about, she said, well, tell me about the week. Last year you were such a chatterbox. And I had the same amount of stories, the same amount of things, but it was almost like the pendulum swung differently. It took a little bit more effort. For example, I chatted with one guy. We have to be careful here, but several years ago, he called me, and he wasn't working at this vendor anymore. And he called me. He was telling me about this sad situation in his life. He said, I don't know why I'm calling you right now, but I just feel like you're someone I can talk to and listen to. Right? And we kind of left it at that. Now, fast forward to last year, about 10, 12 years after that phone call, and the guy sits down on one of our buckets, and he just waves to me, and he says, hey, I'm right here. Wait, when you're done talking with whoever I was talking to, he goes, I'd love to chat with you. So I came over, and we're talking business and a little bit, and he all of a sudden is just vomiting out what happened over the last few years to him. Again, tragic story, tragedy after tragedy. And I just kind of took that leap of faith, if you will, and I said, you know what? I said, I think I know where you're at, but I said, I got this, I started this podcast, and maybe you'll, if you want to tune in and just listen to a few things, because part of it is talking about protecting others, community, family and home and individuals and whatnot. But the other part is I do a sermon series just to help those who maybe aren't going to walk into the church door anytime soon, right? And again, planting seeds. And I said to him, I said, maybe, here's a sticker with my logo. Maybe you'll listen in here and just give it a listen. And he just goes, is this going to be inspiring to me? And I'm like, wow. I said, I sure hope so. And he had a smile on his face, then he walked away. But it was that kind of thing that it was like a heavy conversation. And instead of like, oh man, Greg, you're a brother in Christ. Oh, Evan, you're a brother in Christ. It was more about like people who had tragedy in their lives, illnesses happening. I need prayer. It was, man, kind of draining. And that was a huge difference, And and my that's my wife, she's much smarter than me, had said, here's the situation. Like that took more out of you before, where you were getting the year before. Last year you were giving a lot, and I'm like, oh yeah, like it all made sense after that. I'm sure you guys have had some days like that too, where you're just worn out. So thinking a little bit more about like bearing your shield, guys. for the industry is one thing. You guys have a lot of years of marriage, both of you do, and you have children. Greg, maybe start with you. You and I are closer in age, and how have you carried the shield for your kids? And now that they're adults, like, how do you still carry the shield and protect them?
Prayer. It's a lot of prayer for the kids. We prayed with the kids when they were younger, and just they all have something different going on in their lives, and we've just been really praying for our kids lately, and that's I don't want to say that's just about all you can do, but that is what you can do for your kids, because I don't want to minimize it by saying just. And but it's prayer for the kids and trying to be there to answer questions for them. If you have the opportunity to be able to talk to them, you share with them and say, well, how would God handle what do you think God would think about that? Mm-hmm. And I had a circumstance the other day where something came up, and I said, you don't do that. You can't do that. That's not the way to do things. But it's just sometimes people, they just think that's how everybody else is doing it. And but I'm trying to set the example of it goes back to conscientious example of you remember when Mike Singletary was speaking. Remember when all of a sudden we needed more chairs in there, Ron? I don't know if Evan saw this or not, but you probably remember, Ron. I think we talked about it. We needed to bring more chairs in from the other room, and guess who was bringing in chairs from the other room? Was a Hall of Fame Chicago Bear linebacker, Mike Singletary, was picking up chairs crazy. And bringing them into the other room, so all these other guys that mow lawns could have a seat. And that I just turned around and I happened to see him doing that, and I was going, wow, because I was going to turn around and go grab some chairs too, but just being the example. That's really what we've got to do, is just be examples to our kids and pray for them, and because they're getting it from all sides right now. And the issue that we have right now is I'll get sort of political. We can't trust the media. And because the media has just got, but the media has just got so much information out there that you can't really believe. So what is everybody going to? Hopefully Turf Nerds podcasts and the Bear Your Shield podcast. But they're getting so much, they're getting their information from podcasts right now. And right around the election time, you're thinking, that's why Trump went on the shows that he did. He went on Joe Rogan. He went on Theo Vaughn, I think. He went on a bunch of shows to be on these podcasts because that's where the younger people are getting all their news from, their information from. But right now, they're getting inundated with all kinds of information right now. They got just so much stuff that they're hearing because it's there. It's constant. It's Instagram. It's TikTok. It's everything that they're getting their information from. And the concern right now I have for them is where are they getting their information from and how legitimate is that source, because can't get it from the media. And now you're starting to even question a lot of stuff that they're seeing on the podcast. So keep praying for the kids right now, guys. If you've got kids, pray hard for them, because they're getting inundated with all kinds of information. It's almost like AI. I looked up something on AI the other day, and I Googled something. I got an answer. I don't remember what it was. But then I looked down a little bit further, and it was the exact opposite answer of what I had asked. Gosh. And so I'm looking at this going, that's what they're getting right now. So pray for your kids. That's the biggest thing you can do right now.
Yeah, Greg, I almost needed prayer at the prayer breakfast because, speaking of Mike Singletary helping, he had some chairs, and I was like, Mike, let me get it, because I'm on for those who don't know, I'm on the prayer breakfast board there, and I felt like Mike should be chilling out and prepping for his talk. Mm-hmm. And I went to grab the chairs, and he said, I got it, and he gave me that linebacker stare for a moment.
I got it
for a moment. I peed a little, you know what I mean? So it's like, yeah.
That's funny. That's funny. No, but I mean, how impressed were you with that? And I wonder how many guys actually saw that. So
yeah, I wonder too.
I didn't see it.
Yeah, I wonder too. I know most of the board we were all scrambling there in the back saw that, but that was pretty cool to see the help. Evan, you have a 3-year-old, and now you got a little baby girl, newborn. How are you going to carry the shield for your young kids?
Well, to reiterate, Ron, so what does carrying your shield mean? And you talked about this in your first episode of your podcast. Bearing your shield. Wow, I can't even talk. Bearing your shield, protecting those around you, protecting those who can't protect themselves. Clearly, my 3-year-old son and my, 2.5-week-old baby girl can't really protect themselves. And it also means being the pastor of your work. Take up your shield and be a mighty man for the Lord. And I guess I can carry my shield for my daughter and my son by A, protecting them, but by B, just imparting God's wisdom and God's truth onto them. It talks about in God's word, in addition to all, having taken up the shield of faith, which you will be able to extinguish all the flaming arrows of the evil one. And if I can instill that principle into my children, train a child up in a way they should go, even when they were old, even when they get old. Hopefully, they won't depart from it. But I kind of paraphrase that verse. It's instilling faith into them, which faith is a shield, and you want to do it as young as you can possibly get, because the world is going to scream at them. I mean, the lawn care industry screams at us. They want us to hyper focus on riches and wealth and all of this stuff. Follow all these creators, and sure, that's nice to a point, but that doesn't really matter. What really matters is just being able to be there and provide for your family, being a light and a witness to Christ. So, back to the main thing: how will you carry and bear my shield for my offspring and my kids is just instilling the faith into them and physically protecting them, and then spiritually protecting them too, so they can walk in God's truth and God's ways.
Yeah, that's awesome. So you said mighty men, and I love that's coming right out of the Old Testament, 2 Samuel, David and his mighty men. I love those, and it's interesting for those who are like, oh yeah, I can't be a mighty man of God. I'll tell you, you can't, because David had these groups of guys, right? They were thieves, and they were in debt, and they were probably murderers. Like, they weren't like these guys looking around like Marvel's Thor, right? They weren't like that. They were some ruffians, if you will. They might have had the cigarette out doing the trim work, Greg. I don't know, but
yeah. Greg smokes cigarettes all the time. He's just lying to you.
but the reality is, there were mighty men, and then there were the 3, right? And the 3, one of the guys was Eleazar, he fought so hard it said his sword froze to his hand, right? He couldn't let go of his sword. He was gripping it so much. And another guy took out 800 men in the field, right? The mighty men were still the mighty men. They just didn't attribute to the same stories and same battles as the 3. So when you say mighty men, we can all be the mighty men, right? We might not get up to the 3 status, but we can certainly be a mighty man of the Lord. I love that, Evan. I'm so grateful you said that. That's one of my favorite sections in the Bible.
Yeah, you had pulled that right out of your first episode. Go on, Greg. Sorry.
No, go ahead, Evan. Finish, and then I'll interrupt you.
Oh, that's all I wanted to say. But just to kind of wax on this more, though, Ron, God is our shield, though, too. I mean, Proverbs 35, every word of God is tested. He's a shield to those who take refuge in him. Getting on there into the literal shields in the battle, in the Bible, 1 Samuel 17:7, the shaft of his spear was like a weaver's beam, and the head of his spear weighted 600 shekels of iron, and his shield carrier also walked with him. This is tough stuff, and you got a great name for the podcast, and bearing the shield is so important, because I think, honestly, Ron, I think a lot of men and spiritual men who I've walked with and who've known me for a long time, they don't bury their shield. They're kind of wimps. So, I've been through some church hurt, and it's just sad to see men who have not carried their shield.
Yeah, I've been there, done that too, with seeing some things that I thought people were mature believers, and I think we're all in growth mode. We're all in growth mode. I don't believe in the mature believer thing anymore, and I think we're never perfect, right? We're always getting closer to God.
Yeah.
I think, Uncle Greg, you had something you're going to.
Yeah, I was going to, if I could just add a little more shield speak to to the conversation. Just in our church yesterday, we were talking about Psalm 3. And I read some of the verses here. Oh Lord, how many are my foes? Because that's why we need our shield. Oh Lord, how many are my foes? How many rise up against me? Many are saying of me, God will not deliver him. But you are a shield around me, O Lord. And my glorious one who lifts up my head, but you are a shield around me, O Lord. And it's really interesting because as we're getting ready to do this, I was listening to that going, oh, this is perfect for tomorrow, what we're going to be talking about and bearing your shield. But what he talked about was the shield absorbs the blows of the enemy and it protects us and surrounds the person from the enemy. But that's what we're trying to do is protect, like you were saying, protect our families, protect our clients. How many, Evan, I don't know how many lawn clients you have that are 60 or above or 70 or above. And those are the clients that we have to protect from other guys that could come in and take advantage of them. I had a 102-year-old client one time.
Holy smokes.
And she still lived at home by herself. Mm-hmm. And I knocked on her door, introduced myself to her because I picked her up from somebody else. And then a week later, I was there doing mowing and saw something in the lawn, went and knocked on her door, said, hey, just so you know, I saw this, blah, blah, blah. And she's talking with me. And then at the end of our conversation, it was 5 minutes, maybe 10, she looks at me and says, who are you? And it made me nervous. And because I'm thinking, she has, I don't know if you've heard me say this before, but she just opened the door and started talking to me. And I'm thinking, somebody's got to protect this lady. And
that's scary.
Oh yeah. But the interesting part was I happened to be there by her house that evening, saw a car in her driveway, figured it wasn't hers at 102. And didn't think she was driving, but I knocked on the door and daughter-in-law came to the door and I said, hey, can I show you something out here? And she said, oh yeah, hang on. I told her who I was and said, let me show you something I got here. And she came out and I said, look, I don't have anything to show you. I just wanted to tell you what happened earlier today. And she goes, oh, wow, thank you so much. And I said, I'm going to periodically just knock on the door for her. And, because I thought, I need to help protect her in any way I can as well. So protecting our clients, protecting our family, just bear that shield to fend off the rocks and the slings and the arrows that are coming their way.
Yeah, that's awesome. Evan, you brought up the armor of God, and it's interesting to me. Like I was always taught that the only offensive weapon in the armor of God that's in the book of Ephesians, for those who aren't familiar with it, Ephesians 6:10, it starts out with that the word of God is the only offensive weapon. I've heard that time and time again in sermons here, in a sermon, and I don't think that's true. I think the shield of faith is also, you think about, movies with the shield, Captain America, right? Throwing the shield at people and knocking them. That's a weapon, a shield, as we do use it for defense. It's also can be an offensive weapon, and we just have to be on guard with that too, from that perspective. So yeah, guys, I really appreciate you guys coming on and talking about faith and protecting the industry, protecting your families. I'll tell you, you're my two favorite nerds in the world. I'll tell you that right now, in all honesty.
Well, you're too nice.
Wow. Above
Any
Potsy
closing
Weber.
words? What's that?
I said above Potsy Weber.
Potsy. That's
Who's Potsy Weber?
long.
You're like dating me.
Oh, that's an old sitcom. Happy Days, man.
Oh, Happy Days. Yeah, I know Happy Days. Okay,
But they used to-
I've seen that. I just can't name actresses.
Yeah. Well, it was a he.
Whatever. Okay, I should just shut up now. I'm just
Actually,
digging
now that I
myself
think
into
of
a hole.
it, now that I think of it, she called him Dren because she thought he was the opposite of a nerd. And but on Happy Days, they used to call people nerds all the time. But would have been better if you understood it, Evan, and probably I don't know how many % of your audience would get it, Ron.
Well, yeah, we can't end on a Happy Days note, guys. Is there any closing words that you guys would like to say to to maybe the Bear Your Shield and maybe a shout out to your own podcast?
Oh, you're too nice, Ron. Well, if you want to listen to the Turf Nerds, us, Greg and I, we do have a podcast which morphed into a radio show. It airs Monday through Friday, 7 to 8 a.m. on Turf's Up Radio, but also on the Turf Nerds YouTube channel. And Ron, it's been a great privilege to get on here and hopefully, Lord willing, encourage your listeners to keep in step with the Spirit and bear their shield. And it's a task, guys. I mean, we should take up our cross daily to follow Christ, and this is not an easy thing to do. Like, hey, if you really think about it, I mean, we should be full steam ahead in doing this, but this is we should be able to do tough things and bear our shield and be bold as men. We need to actually act like men and step out there and in faith and talk about it, not just be about it, but like actually talk about it and do. So, in any sort of facet of life, you don't have to cut grass. Guys, look at Ron. He works a corporate job here. That's even probably a little bit more difficult than what Greg and I do with like one-on-one clients on the daily. Ron's got this big company that he has to try to weave through, and depending on the company, he could get canned if he shares his faith. Not the thing with Bobcat, but you know what I mean. And so, Ron, it's just been a great honor to be on.
Yes, thanks so much, Evan, Greg. Really appreciate you guys. And folks out there, listen, thanks so much for listening. Godspeed. And until next time, bear your shield.